quite something really to be able to share a little bit of Rwanda in the Jewish Holocaust Centre. About 10 days ago I was in southern Rwanda filming killers and survivors sitting side by side. And one of the things they talked about was the empathy that they feel with survivors of the Holocaust. And this image here is one of several stained glass windows in the main Gisozi Genocide Memorial Centre in Kigali. And it's by the Israeli artist Arden Salter. And there's a section in the Rwandan Genocide Memorial Centre about other genocides: Nazi Germany, Armenia, Cambodia, the Balkans. And many remote areas in Rwanda were so separated that some villagers had no idea that this was a national event taking place. They only knew what was happening perhaps within a kilometre of their own house. So the message that it wasn't just my messed up village, or it wasn't just my crazy country, or it's not just this cursed continent of Africa, was an important message, and has been an important message as they try and come to terms with what happened, how it happened, and why it happened. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to introduce ourselves and why we're here and what we do, and then I'll talk a little bit of some of the issues that come out of the film, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So my name's David Fullerton, and my colleague, partner, wife is Sally Morgan. We've just spent a month in Rwanda. I've come back feeling a little battered and neat, and I needed a trip to the garage. I've got a skin cancer that's got to get taken off my nose. I've got a tooth that's broken that needs fixed. So I'm feeling a trip to the mechanics will do me good somewhere in the next month. So if you can bear with this slightly battered visage, I'll try and talk a bit about Rwanda. As a part-time filmmaker and graphic artist and web designer, chunks of my time over the last few years have been spent giving ordinary Rwandans a voice, helping them tell their stories of genocide and recovery to a Western audience who largely abandoned them at the time when they needed it most. Sally is a teacher and curriculum writer who has developed some fairly gutsy teaching resources around the ideas raised by these Rwandan stories. The origins of conflict, the prevention of genocide ideologies, justice in post-conflict societies, recovery, both personal and collective. For two ordinary people working out of a spare room, a spare bedroom, now that the kids have all left home, this involvement with Rwanda has at times been making our heads spin. I remember standing under the gum trees in rural Rwanda on the side of a green terraced mountain near the Congo border, filming one of the Gacaca sessions, this community justice process, and thinking, I can't believe I'm here, and why am I here? This is nuts. And in 2011, the Rwandan Stories website and films was nominated for UN Australian Media Peace Award up against Fairfax and SBS. We won. Then over the last month in Rwanda, talking with heads of governments like the head of the NURC, the National Unity Reconciliation Commission, the head of the CNLG, the Commission for the Prevention of Genocide, and sometimes I want to say, come on guys, I have my morning coffee in Croydon Main Street. This is weird. This is weird. And of course, working in education on big ideas that emerge out of stories from a developing African country is not a pathway to business success. The challenges to make a project like this even a little bit sustainable is sort of always there with us. So that's us. That's us. Now, the film. I'll just put up the page of our website. That's the home page. The film. I thought it's probably important to spend a few minutes on the central idea of the film, forgiveness. And I'm going to try and answer briefly two questions. One is, how is it that forgiveness came to be so front and centre in Rwanda's recovery process? There's a lot of people make films and tell stories about forgiveness in Rwanda as if it's a kind of a given. I thought, why? Why is it a given? How come that became front and centre? So I'll have a look at that. And then the other thing is, what do Rwandans mean by forgiveness? It may well be something very different than what we understand. So I'll just talk briefly about those things. How did it become such a central thing in Rwanda's recovery process? Well, 3 points. First, forgiveness, or something like it, was part of the policy of the transitional government right from the start. They said, tell the truth about what you did and your sentence will be reduced. Justice will be more lenient. If you tell the truth, explain what happened, how it happened, what you did, where you put the bodies, who was involved, so that the people who have lost relatives can give their family and friends a decent burial. So a good practical reason to tell the truth, everybody's going to be better off. The second thing that they said, we want everyone, and people were a little shocked by this. They said, we want everyone, Hutu, Tutsi, survivors or perpetrators, people remaining in Rwanda or people who fled Rwanda to neighbouring countries, we want everyone to come home and be part of building a new Rwanda. So that's the first reason. It was on the table right from the start. The leadership put it there. The second reason is, before the genocide, as you can sort of see in the film, Rwanda had been a church-going population. That raises a lot of questions, but that's the case. But there were problems with that. First, and they touched on these things in the film, churches were seen by Rwandans, and continue to be, as going hand in hand with colonial exploitation and the spread of a divisive, subtle genocide ideology. Church schools were the only schools, and in many cases they discriminated between Hutu and Tutsi. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that during the genocide, tens of thousands of people had been killed in churches, as you saw, or church buildings. Sometimes because people naturally gathered there, because they thought if we all get together, maybe we'll feel a little safer. Sometimes because they hoped that perhaps a church is a house of God, and maybe God will protect them in there. Sometimes perhaps they thought the killers would be a little reluctant to come into a space like that. None of those are true. And sometimes, as the film showed, because priests, either pressured by or complicit with the militia, encouraged their congregations to gather within church compounds and only to betray them. And of course, for the militia, it was easier to kill thousands of people conveniently assembled in one place than to take on the sweaty task of hunting down people one by one through the forests and the marshes. And there were certainly other cases where good people, both Hutu and Tutsi, resisted the militia and did their best to protect people from them. But by the end of the genocide, most people's faith in the church was pretty severely shaken. So that's the second reason. The third reason is sometimes the message after the genocide, as the recovery process began, or at least the aftermath of genocide began, sometimes the message of repentance and forgiveness from both church and government was delivered with very little finesse. At times it was a blunt instrument which asked the impossible from a newly and deeply traumatised population. In fact, at times it only succeeded in re-traumatising them and adding to their confusion and pain and grief. But despite that, the ideas of repentance, forgiveness and reconciliation took root in the public consciousness. So it was on the table from the start. The leaders put it there. They were a church-going population familiar with these concepts. And the third reason that it was there and stayed there was that Rwandans seemed to have a willingness to take on any challenge. Their energy and their self-reliance is boundless. The strong sense that the world abandoned them in 1994 has become part of their consciousness. And since then, the leadership that has placed the responsibility for recovery and reconstruction in the hands of each region, each town, each village, each street, each neighbourhood. The slogan, if it's going to be, it's up to me, is almost, could be Rwandan, almost, because they wouldn't say me, they would say us. If it's going to be, it's up to us. Individualism is a strange thing to Rwandans. If it's going to be, it's up to us. Relationships and community have always been at the heart of Rwandans' identity. And in 1994, genocide, that orchestrated campaign of I was just thinking of some of the images, but creative viciousness got into that space of community and tore it apart. And neighbour against neighbour, no family left untouched, everyone implicated. You can tell I've only back a week, sort of feeling it a bit. But 19 years later, the evidence suggests that the response of many Rwandans to that destruction of their community has been, well, we've seen the worst that we can do. Well, now let's see the best. Now let's see the best. So, for example, as the film showed, when the government said, we can't afford to keep everyone locked up, we can't afford to keep all these productive members of society in jail, and gradually released, with training and with education camps and all the rest of it, released prisoners into society, and then handed the responsibility for justice for the great majority of genocide crimes over to the local populations in every village. The world said, you can't do that, that's crazy, that is nuts. But Rwandans said something like, wow, that's big. But okay, let's do this, let's do this. And so across Rwanda, which is a third of the size of Tasmania, an education campaign rolled out, and 11,000 gacaca courts were set up all around the country in every village. They chose people who were respected in the local community to be judges, and they all gathered outside every week for 9 years and processed 400,000 genocide crimes. Total cost, $55 million. That compares with the UN War Crimes Tribunal in Russia, which dealt with about 100 cases, or less than, for a cost of over $1 billion.